commercial. They're taking out of the mix, so you can no longer use RDA dollars to incentivize commercial to either move into your jurisdiction or to assist them in any way in developing successful commercials. They're taking out of the mix. So
that's a proposed change.
that's a proposed change. Yeah, these are all proposed, but
Hasn't
this
happened yet. He was like, "Congratulations, you're the last one."
Yeah. So this is you know, in a tsunami, you see the sucking of the ocean and the fish are flopping all over the place. This is that stage.
Okay.
And then a tsunami comes and then it goes back out again. And hopefully you make sense of everything that happened up there, because quite frankly, there's some really scary stuff, you know, that is happening. Just an illustration of some of the things that a bill that shifts the burden for non-conforming uses. So if you've got a non-conforming use, the whole philosophy behind non-conforming uses is that they'll eventually disappear. And that's the reason we put up with them for years and years. And then when they go out of business and they're out of business for a year or more, then your non-conforming uses disappear. And that's intentional. It's so that you can bring your zones into conformity with what's going on around them. And you don't have one auto storage facility in the middle of your commercial zone or in the middle of your residential zone. So you try to get rid of that. So the burden has always been on the applicant to show that they had a legal use there. You know, it's not just that, it's always been there. No, that won't work. They have to come in and get a non-conforming use status. Well, what they want to do is shift the burden, they being the development community, want to shift the burden on the city, onto the city, to successfully prove that that is an illegal use, that it didn't come in legally in the first place. And they won't let you use things like building permits, the absence of a building permit.
Or all the official tools that we have.
All the official tools that we've got. And you've got to have pictures, literally, of back in time. That's how crazy that is. So essentially, the bottom line is you can have a use, and as long as you hide it long enough, and it never comes to the attention of the city, that use will eventually become legal. That's the end result of it. And so there's a lot of negotiation on that going around. It totally flies in the face of what zoning is all about, but that's one that they would really like to see happen. There's another one which allows for the change in boundaries by simple agreement, boundary adjustment agreement. They took that out last year. They're putting it back in. I think this year is what they're going to do, so that somebody can, if you just want to simply adjust a boundary between two neighbors, you can still do that. It still has to be approved by the city, but it doesn't have to go through all of the trappings of municipal government. Some of the other things that they're looking at, the thing that we hate most are mandates and preemptions. Those are nasty words. They're worse than transparency, literally, because everything's done under the guise of transparency up there. But here's some of the mandates that we're looking at. No lawn, no provision of our code can deal with lawn and can approve or require lawn or sod or any type of green. So you can't have an ordinance that says, 10% of your lot has to be in green space. It has to, literally, you have to stay out of the issue of whether or not you can put lawn in. That's Representative Ward out of Bountiful, who is interesting lad. He was the one that proposed the ADU statute last year. And there's more clarification on the ADU, accessory dwelling unit, internal accessory dwelling unit. More clarification on that, because I think I might have told you this, but the ADU statute last year didn't address impact fees. And some of the cities have said, hey, there's a second unit in there. We get to charge impact fees for that second unit. Well, that was never intended. I mean, if you got 12 kids and most of them live in the basement, and then they move out, and grandma and grandpa now become grandma and grandpa, and you got caregivers, two caregivers downstairs, one of their kids marries, and you got two caregivers, you got less use in that home as an ADU than you ever had when there were 12 kids living in the basement. And so the ridiculousness of charging an additional impact fee, it just doesn't make any sense. But that's Lehigh. And then the other issue was that a lot of the cities were counting that as a second dwelling unit. So when you're looking at density and you come in with your subdivider, you come in, you're looking at density, and all of a sudden the city says, well, are you going to put ADUs in these homes? Yeah. Well, now you've doubled your density. And so you got to limit the number of units that you're going to put in there. So they,
On a subdivision.
yeah, on a subdivision, which has been that's been a really bad thing for us to do or to have done. So it's the whole idea of ADUs was to provide for affordable housing in our own homes as a result of, I mean, there's no reason why having kids in the basement is any different than having your married kid in the basement with his wife. That's a second dwelling unit. But, so the idea was to provide for affordable housing. Tony, do you have a question on that? Or you're trying to figure it out? No, the only requirement is that the owner of the house live in the main house.
Has to be owner occupied.
Uh-huh.
Oh, microphone.
Yeah, and you can actually have up to 4. Here's the other one. The state wants to keep track of these things, and so they're wanting everybody to record on their deed when they allow for an ADU in their home. And you think about how kind of ridiculous that is. That really doesn't give them an idea, because the second piece of that is they want to take away our right to business license them. In other words, to know where they're located. You're better off to use the business licensing that a city keeps track of than you are filing a deed down at the county recorders. And the reason for that is that what happens when the person who occupies the unit is no longer the owner? You go down to the county and change the deed every single time that happens. And that could happen a number of times over the years. And so it's kind of a ridiculous thing, but that came out of what they call the CHA, or the Affordable Housing Committee. They've got some kind of strange ideas. The interesting thing about the legislature you'll find is that they see things from a different perspective. Like they're just short of deity, and the rest of us are all mulling around out there. I'm sorry, you got to know, Mayor, that I've been up there for a long time, and it's horrible. But
I'm just thinking, I've been in violation of that. I had my son living with me.
yeah,
Is that what you're talking?
well, if he's in a separate unit, you may have did you have a downstairs base? Yeah, that can be a second unit now. Under the law, last year's law changed to allow that, but some of the cities have gone a little excessive in the way that we've interpreted it. So you can have a second unit now, and it has to be licensed, and there's no business or building permit requirements. So you can, it's a good deal. Go ahead.
So I could take my home, which is in a single family residence zone right now. And I could actually rent out my basement.
Hmm.
Are there stipulations on that? Does it have to be like, would I have to have a kitchen and a bathroom? And I mean, how does that all?
No.
Not necessarily. I can just rent out a room.
Mhm.
So the line,
Has to just
the
be
line between single family residence and sort of medium density is getting a little more, a little
there's-
blurry.
Yeah, and there's been proposals to just get rid of single family zoning altogether. But
Other
this is
than- Other
a
than
step towards it.
you have to live in.
You have to be owner occupied.
You have to be owner
Yeah,
occupied.
owner occupied is
Yeah.
something they didn't back off of.
And it has to be attached. So you can't make a
Okay.
apartment in the back.
Yes.
Your roof line has to be attached. So you could,
in a
put
treehouse.
you could,
Put a breezeway in?
yeah.
You could.
Did you?
Yeah, you could.
And then the only other thing that the city can require is the parking. So,
One additional parking space.
and then other than that, the city can't say boo about it, right? You connect all your sewer to the same lateral, your water connection can be divided out.
What
Yeah.
about short-term versus long-term rental? Is there any program there? I mean, you could rent that ADU weekly?
Okay, so the ADU statute is only for long-term rentals.
Okay.
It does not include short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are still governable by the city. if you're gonna rent it and
If the
roll it
city
over every
regulates
week.
it, yeah. If the city already has something that regulates short-term rental in the zone.
If it doesn't, you can do
Basically,
it
what's the time between short and long?
less than 30 days.
30 days.
So
Greater than 30 is long-term.
Mhm.
how do you look at Airbnb or a VRBO? How does that? How
That'd
does
be
that
short
fit? That would be short term, but you could do it.
Right. Right now in Morgan, you could do it. And in Layton, you can do it because we don't have a prohibition against it and we don't regulate it.
You have to have a business license to do it.
Yes.
Is it
Mhm.
VRBO or Airbnb,
Mhm.
but you could do it.
Mhm. And if you have a transient room tax, they have to
Oh,
pay
that's
the
great.
transient room tax. Yeah. So, I mean, for a lot of jurisdictions, they've embraced it. Garden City, for example.
But
Has
then
a
again,
really good
it's still
system, so-
owner occupied,
Yep.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So not multi-family, just you can rent out, that's how you rent out your basement or
Mhm.
a couch or.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
won't offer any others creative suggestions.
What was Garden City doing?
Garden City actually has a really good program for tracking them. And they embrace them and they make a lot of money on it.
They have a lot
Is it like
going
a
on.
tax off of it?
Mhm.
Yeah. And
They
so.
created their own program for tracking.
Yeah. You get in some of those resort, Moab,
But,
George, Washington County.
Yeah.
but in my opinion, that's the reason why affordable housing is such a hard issue. I think it has more to do with the short-term rentals than it does housing stock. Because your thought went to the same place. Well, if I have a unit, I can rent it out for $1,000 a month, or I could do $100 a night. And now it's 3,000, the earning potential is 3,000. When are you gonna do? Right? And I don't have to, as a landlord, you got a bad renter, they're there for 3 days. They leave, you charge them whatever cleaning fee was applicable, and everything gets refreshed and the next group comes in. It's a lot better option than a long-term renter that you have perpetual problems with,
Don't want that.
right? And so as the housing market goes up, that bottom group of rental property, I think, is getting priced out from short-term
What's that?
rentals.
The other spinoff from that is what I heard from the recorders in Tropic when I was down there is that the short-term rental is built to the max. I mean, they've got marble countertops and everything else they've upgraded it, these older homes to the level where now, the kid who's grown up and now wants to live in Tropic is looking for a home, and the home that he could have lived in down the street is now a short-term rental. And the value of that home is way, way through the ceiling
Well, they wanna
And so it's
probably
in-
increase the nightly fee by fixing it up.
and increase the values.
That wasn't the
So-
intent of the ADU program.
Yeah,
So unintended consequence.
Yeah,
I wonder if they understand all that.
they don't care.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I've hit 6 o'clock if you want to, but I can keep going and I will. I'll bring you updates each time.
really dry.
That was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah. So,
You wanna do it?
So this development mentality, the people that we've elected there, it just seems like they're all the time picking away at the cities.
Yeah.
Will that ever change?
Yeah. Their idea, this is the crazy idea. The reason for taking away your retail incentives, because they feel if they take away your retail incentives, which you get sales tax from, that you will increase the number of housing units that you build rather than commercial units. And the commercial will come on its own. That's the philosophy behind it. I don't think that's the case.
Well, as long as you have room for the commercial.
Yeah.
units.
Yeah, here's.
You gotta have commercial.
Problem, this will be statewide, is that right?
Yep.
So business is now going to go every place other than Utah because they have the incentives.
Yep.
It's not one city in Utah competing against another city. It's now Utah's less competitive to bring in business than surrounding states or even any state in the US that allows it.
Mhm. Yeah,
So-
that will be,
Boy, that's a big backfire there.
it is. And they're aimed at the big box. But if you think about it, there are a lot of retail dry communities in the state of Utah. I'm not saying Morgan's one of them, but we've only got one Ridley's, right?
Mhm.
And will Morgan ever need another? Sure, yeah. You may get to that tipping point where it will just take a little incentive to get, I mean, the car dealerships are a good example. The tipping point was we would provide a road, we provided a lot of the infrastructure there. And so we're fighting really hard to still allow for the construction of system improvements or infrastructure, because that would be the death knell if we're not able to use our cash incentives for that.
So if that were to go through, we couldn't do what we just did 30 minutes ago.
No,
Yeah.
nope, that's the end of that program. So sorry,
You're under the wire.
you elected them.
And the idea is so that commercial property gets converted into residential. Did
Right.
you already cover that part?
Yeah, and
Yeah, look at how we're trying to.
And our residential property taxes up here are already through the roof.
Yep. Anyway,
yeah. Anyway, you can, don't get me going on this because I'm real. This is a very, very upsetting subject.
This is it's happening. I mean, it's proposed.
Proposed. Yeah, that's what we go up and fight every single year. Fight against every single year. So.
and,
Well,
and
I just gnaw at their ankles. That's till they give up.
And then one of the meetings, then we did throw into exempt class, fourth class and below. Right, so that's always our other card when we attend some of these meetings, to say, if you're gonna be crazy, and this is a Wasatch Front problem that you're trying to apply statewide, then just exempt the little guys from this one, and that's what I brought up. We're the only city in the whole county. Who are we competing with for commercial? We're not. We're doing everything we can to sustain our community through commercial because it's hard enough with the population that we have, so we're just trying to grow or save that space for what its intended use is next to the freeway and the train tracks. No matter how bad you want us to do housing, we gotta have some commercial space. So anyway, we can get an exemption. That's always good.
So that's my job this year, is to exempt fourth class cities from that.
Yeah.
And
Fourth, fifth,
I get to float down the Weber River next summer if I accomplish that.
Carry.
We're in between meetings, so yes.
Okay.
Float a bunch of ducks down the river. We did a duck float or whatever it was
That
called,
sounds fun.
fundraiser.
We're at 6:05, so we can just move into the work meeting, correct? Has everybody had a chance to look over the items? As many times as I've been through them, you'd think I'd have them memorized, but my mind doesn't work that way. Is there any comments or any input on item 1, amendment to Title 8, chapters 802 and 804?
Mayor? I made a couple of notes when I was going through this the other day. I guess I just want to get Gary, on B1. The property to be served shall only be considered if there is an existing structure previously serviced by another source of culinary water. It's subsequently unable to receive that service due to the unavailability of the source. So what could constitute the unavailability of that source?
Well dries up or becomes contaminated. Or if they're fed from a spring, some of them have spring dries up.
Would there ever be a situation where that would make sense for them to hook onto the city water and somehow manipulate it so it looked like there was an unavailability of that source? Does that make sense in any, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they'd have to prove that was unavailable. And the only way you do that really is by the state engineer saying no, or the health department saying no.
We allowed one here about a year and a half ago with that Terry Lawrence up at the end of 100 South. Fry Hollow was drying up and I guess still continues to. And that was his primary source of culinary water, as well as Como, that feeds Como also. he petitioned and we approved a city line. Of course, it was right there across from Wilkinson's and saved him from losing water.
Well, I have some pictures of all the outer extremities of the county or the city. If you just want to look at them, some were pretty interesting to me.
I have a, I'm sorry.
And I must say, that's like the number one topic for the new mayor,
His water.
is water.
Every mayor said that going back 150 years,
Yeah.
Steve. If it's any
Oh,
consolation.
dang.
May I continue for just a second, Mayor, on C3? Can I go down to C3 for just a second? That sounds, so it sort of sounds like toward the end of that, are we talking about like a pioneer agreement there? If someone puts in a main and then someone comes along a little later and hooks onto it, is that what we're discussing there?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And who would make that agreement? Would that be an agreement that the city brings forth, or would it be the agreement of the individual who puts that water line, pays and puts that water line in? I mean, how does that work?
So the way that it normally works, when we used to do payback agreements, and you're still
Pioneer.
able to do it, you're authorized to do it, is the first person comes in, they build the main line. There's oversizing for additional users.
Okay.
And the oversizing can be paid one of two ways. It can be paid back through, if you've collected an impact fee for that, for the large pipe, and somebody comes in and puts it in, you can actually reimburse that individual through impact fees, agreement between us and the individual. If that pipe is going to service others, then you could enter into a pioneer agreement for a system improvement, for example, that is going to service other people. And so what would happen is we figure out what the cost was. The engineer, Matt, does this, and you're going to see one of these come through. But Matt figures out what the cost is and what is attributable to the others that are going to connect on. We enter into a pioneer agreement with them, indicating that we will collect so much money from each of these lot owners that are going to connect onto it at the time of development approval, at the time of building permit. And then we remit that money back to the developer. We did that up in Mahogany Ridge, if you remember. That we did a variation of that, but we did that.
Okay, so we're still able to do that. I mean,
Mhm.
that's still on the table.
It is, and it's in your ordinance. You still have that ability in your ordinance.
And then finally, we're talking about just one master meter going into an area. I forget which one it is. See, could be. Yeah, there you go.
Yep, master meter, you're right.
Yeah.
So Mary, you did
yeah, D1.
memorize that.
So that almost sounds a little bit like an HOA. I mean, if you've got a master meter there and you've got 3 or 4 homes on it, then someone's going to have to be responsible for that, correct?
Correct. It could be a private subdivision, and I've seen it done both with an HOA, that is, if it's big enough for an HOA. But oftentimes, if it's 3 homes, they do what's called a mutual maintenance agreement, where they all sign off on the agreement as to what they'll pay and when they'll pay it. And then they file that against their properties at the county. So you can do it either way.
But if it came to that, the city would probably not get involved in that negotiation with those 3 homeowners. That would just be amongst themselves, how they wanted to divvy that up. Is that?
We would want to see it recorded, but the 3 homeowners we've got one right now that is 3 lots, actually. And they're doing an agreement that's in Layton. They're doing an agreement between the 3 lot owners. But before they actually get their building permits, we want to see that agreement filed so that, and it would provide for, equal payment from each of them for contribution to repairing the line or, that type of thing. But we want them, it's kind of like, to us, it's as important as an HOA because the HOA will take care of it. Well, we want to make sure that it'll be taken care of with these 3 lot owners before we allow them to do that.
Like be on the plat or anything, but it'd be recorded on.
The actual agreement will be recorded against each of the properties on their deeds.
So this is
Good
just an
question.
option. This is also just an option because the provision is for existing homes only. So if it goes into a place where existing homes, it just gives it's not an ideal designed type subdivision. So it just gives us the option to say, we're only going to bring a main to this, you can only bring a main to this point. We're going to master meter it from there. And then everything else is laterals. If there's more than one home under that circumstance, but very limited because we're not talking about new build. And that's why the new build provision is we don't do any new construction unless you annex, because at that point, then you can design the whole water system to standards and get everybody an individual connection where it might not be feasible, to put a meter at every connection. So if somebody wants a shared connection, and that's the only way to get it because they're outside of the city boundaries, it's almost viewed as a temporary situation until the point of annexation happens. Mhm.
Steve, I have a couple of questions. The second whereas references an approval or a recommendation by the city's staff. I didn't see any memo. I mean, typically we'll see on zoning and so forth, planning and zoning and that, we'll see a staff from a memo from the staff. Is there something that goes along with that? Is that just your acknowledgement, Gary, that we're good to go?
Yeah, I'm staff.
Okay.
Sorry. On this, but yeah, this isn't typically, if it goes to the planning commission, you get a staff report.
Right.
That comes up to you so
Yeah.
you know exactly what's going on. This goes directly to you.
Okay.
And so
You hereby give your recommendation.
I do, yes. Thank you,
enough.
David.
Yeah, good enough.
And then, yeah.
All right. The other one I had is just regarding the sewer. I mean, with and we've added that from our last meeting. With the water, we specifically say no new construction outside the city boundaries shall receive approval. I think the intent is there in at the bottom of the page in the red, the new part, but it doesn't specifically state it. It basically says we've got to have the water before the sewer. The fact that there's no new construction for water, is that good enough to say that we don't have to worry about new construction in sewer?
Yeah, I thought about that. We could put a similar provision in the sewer section. We start out by saying that petitioner requirements, any petitioner owning improved property located outside the city limits and desiring sanitary sewer service. And then I think,
That's existing, that's not new construction.
right. So anything improved would have to be existing construction, but I could certainly clarify that if you'd like.
It might match up with the water, it's the same concept between the water and the sewer, I think.
So we'll just put the same.
Sure.
I could add it as an E.
No new construction, I think that makes it clear, even though I think you could argue with those 2 or 3 sentences that it's not going to happen, but there's no question if we've got that statement in there.
That sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
We can make that change. Thank you.
That's all I had.
That might also help with requests that come more from the health department side where
Yeah,
they're
that
more
one.
interested in the sewer connections.
Sure. You look at that and it's clear cut, no new construction.
Well, when they interpret the 300-foot rule end to end for every,
Well, that's what.
for
that's
every
what I was
unit,
thinking.
that might
Remember
help.
We had that one,
Round Valley.
Round Valley, that's what I was gonna bring up. The Round Valley one, that kind of really, that was an interesting concept to
Yeah.
bring to us. But definitely, I think that verbiage was pretty much in that though.
You
wasn't
can understand the health department's, reasoning and
it?
that
Oh, I
makes
get
sense.
it,
but,
yeah.
Just not going to happen. And that's like Evanston coming to us and say, give us some water. It's not going to
exactly.
happen.
Yeah.
So on B, we're on wastewater again, I think it's B I'm talking about. Oh, no, it's C, I'm sorry. It's down on C, it's down on C, the amount of cost to be deposited with the city treasurer. I just wrote down, made a comment. It does say 30 days or such other time as council indicates after the granting thereof. I just wondered sometimes if you were petitioning and the petition was granted, now you gotta go out and try and find some funding. Is 30 days reasonable, or is that enough time? But it does say or such other time as council indicates. So I think the out is there written in there. So I think we're all right with that.
Yeah, something they can put in their application.
Yeah.
If they need more time. Mayor, I was just gonna mention if you wanted a little brief history on what brought us to this. Well, I know you have the maps, but
Yeah, I think we've got time. That'd be good.
I was just gonna say, so what we recognize is that we have water service outside of our boundaries. How that happened, it maybe not be ideal or whatnot. We don't have that problem with the sewer, but this kind of gives us the parameters. We don't really have anything on the books that says why and why not. Some do, some don't. So this kind of gives us the provision that, yeah, if there's a circumstance, an existing home has a need for water, it's already there. It's accessible, that under these conditions, we would consider it, but not new builds, because we're trying to work ourselves out of that situation so that eventually our services, water and sewer, follow the process of annexation and are designed to our standards in entirety and reviewed by our planners, and water capacity, all of that's considered. Because what we're left with now is if we annex, then you got a water line in a random place in a road that we don't own, with no separation or depth necessarily, for that particular geography or that design, and we don't really have any influence over the land use. So the zoning density, that sort of thing. And so it's written in here. It's probably something we won't use very often. It doesn't just totally disallow, but it limits kind of those opportunities that we've recognized, that there are some existing homes that if their well runs dry or comes up contaminated, and so we can still help those out, but it's not intended to facilitate development outside of the city. So that's what this tries to accomplish, that here's the parameters, but in the reality, what we're trying to accomplish is to say, okay, let's not keep the water lines going for miles and miles with no reason why to stop.
We had one come up just last fall that there was new construction just barely outside of the, maybe you're familiar with it, down
Yes.
on the highway there outside of the city limits. And from a practical standpoint, it made sense. Here's the line going right up to the house. But for all
right through their property.
yeah, but for all the reasons that Ty's saying, it doesn't make sense. And we spend a lot of time talking about it, even if I remember right, over the course of 2 separate meetings, where to have, and it was suggested that we have a policy in place, hence we're considering that tonight.
And the other thing is, it's really just a timing issue, right? So for the applicant, it's, I want to go now. So you either go one way or the other, but just put the ball back in their court to say, yeah, when you're ready, annex. And the other thing about that line in the property is it's a lateral. It's a private lateral. It's not a city main.
Correct.
Right. So for us to approve connection to somebody else's private lateral really isn't.
We don't have the ability to, we don't have the authority to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, you have to move it, but that's kind of between you and the neighboring property. And so every situation is a little different.
So to
It's-
clear up my head,
Mhm.
on B, red print is new construction, correct? Pretty much.
New addition to the resolution.
Yes,
So
and
red
what
is
Tony
the
was
new
talking about, is that existing homes? With a master meter and,
The black is the
old resolution.
It's how it stands right now,
It's the existing ordinance.
existing, yeah.
And then we've just added the parts in red.
But does that specify that that isn't new construction in like
No, the,
DE?
no, on B 1 and 2 is the difference.
That's what I was, yeah.
Yeah, so basically you need to meet these conditions, right, before the rest applies. And if you're new construction, then it just says you're not eligible unless you request annexation.
Okay.
Black and white.
And then for the rest of it, it is the conditions for existing.
Okay.
The whole thing's
Okay.
for existing homes. And this provision, number 2, is basically says unless it's new construction, and we're not even having that conversation, you just need to request annexation.
Right.
And that'll be considered at that point.
It might be worth pointing out that in all fairness, about, Dave mentioned a minute ago, a year and a half, we granted one of these. So this isn't like something that's been done in the last, well, it has been done in the last 50 years. But we granted one in about a year and a half.
Yeah, to an existing home, right? But the other applicants, there was 2 other requests for services, but they were both brand new builds
And they-
that we,
It's
yeah, that we
next to
said,
that
you know.
home.
Yeah, it's just,
But that's kind of.
because we're like, no, just
Reason-
take it back, annex, do a subdivision request, and then we can, design it to meet the needs of that subdivision and not just keep ad hocing, like, here, throw a connection in.
How did you ever?
Hope
hear
it
any
works
more
out.
on that request?
Um,
Couple lots there.
yeah, but that was a issue with the land purchase, and there was some things recorded on the property, so this transaction or the sale didn't happen like it was intended to because of other conditions in the sale, right?
So, I mean,
So we haven't heard back, like they haven't resubmitted or applied for permitted.
whether they resolved anything.
There were some other issues just with the property itself that were unknown at the time.
Prevented them from moving forward.
Yeah, so,
There was some easement issues, wasn't there?
yeah, I don't know.
Is there any more discussion on that? It's a hot item.
Yeah. Those are good. Those are good and useful comments, though, I think, for the feedback. So
Yeah, good work.
Gary might have a new revision by the time we have council meeting. I'm just, I'm being mean to Gary today. I apologize.
Terry's gonna have to make the motion because he's.
Denise has got it done.
You're right. She probably does.
Number 2, any discussion?
I can just introduce the
Yeah, do that.
topic if you want, Mayor.
Yes.
So the county has never charged for fire inspections. So the county, in their last, well, maybe it was 2 meetings ago, last meeting, adopted their own fee schedule for fire inspections. We haven't really reviewed it. Gary might have some comments, but that's what this does, is just updates our fee schedule to recognize that the county's fee schedule is in place. So they've just been doing that for free. We've never charged. They've never charged. Or when we did charge, it was for inspections. It wasn't at that rate if the county ends up doing fire inspections. And so that's what the fee schedule kind of represents, is just the impact that it would have on our current fee schedules. So we collect it up front. And then we don't have an agreement, right, with the county to bill us, but this is the starting point on the fee schedule to kind of figure out the logistics. We haven't sat down together and said who bills who, what, when. They don't even know how they're going to collect it at this point, but they do have a new fee schedule. So we just tried to, put it into our fee schedule. So that's kind of the idea there.
So inside of the city limits, the city would collect that.
We don't know that.
We don't know.
Yeah, It's countywide, so he can go do a fire inspection on a business and charge them directly, no problem. But when we have something in court, and when we have something on our fee schedule that requires a fire inspection, then we better either collect it and make sure that the inspection happens, or require a certificate that it's been inspected before we issue our permit. The fee schedule that they adopted is Exhibit A, just so you can kind of see what their rate schedule is.
So,
I can kind of see it working two different ways. One, I think on the more we can just do in-house and not have people chase their tails about getting the inspections, that that's one view, right? So like on a building permit, we already collect all their engineering fees and we just collect that all up front. And then engineer pays us. That would be the best way on those. But if it's outside of something that impacts us, then they could just bill for those directly. So.
maybe Gary, question for you. Whereas the city council, Morgan City finds that the fees set forth herein are reasonable and should be adopted, wouldn't it be good to have a provision that as the county changes theirs, we don't have to re-adopt another schedule?
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have to go through this process every time they change their fees.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. The difficult thing is you'd have to have a separate schedule for, that Denise would have to process and her crew would have to process in there. You'd have to have a county's list and then our consolidated fee schedule. I don't think they're gonna change it enough to be able
so
to
we did that on the building permit
building permit.
only. So we just we don't readdress that. It's just whatever that current rate is and number of inspections. That's on page 3. For like the site plan review fee when they're going through a subdivision request, and we just refer to that fee, whatever that is. And so as that changes, we are referencing that. The other changes are just what we see as the impact to what we currently charge, because now there's the potential of the additional cost that the county is going to be maybe billing us for. So.
I mean, even though we're approving the ordinance that says the fees are reasonable and should be adopted as presented, does that give us an out in the schedule to say as they change, we're good to go?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say to Dave's point, if they did come back with the new fee schedule, I think it's as easy as what we do tonight.
Just adopted.
They just adopt it again. I mean, it seems like the fee schedule, we just guy keeps bringing it back to us and we make a change here and then brings it back and we make a change here to this and.
It's only like our 8th one this year, but we're keeping it up to date.
That's what I appreciate about it though, Ty.
Fire fee schedule in there for your reference.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, we're not adopting it.
To our fee schedule. And so.
Oh.
if we
Oh,
were to
okay.
change that, we don't have to re-adopt that.
So that exhibit A isn't part of the ordinance.
No,
Good.
no, it
I didn't
was
catch that.
for reference only.
I didn't
The
catch the
only thing
question,
that
so I
we're
appreciate that.
concerned about is the fire inspections for business licenses and then the fees that they want to
Okay.
charge for site plan review. And so if they change theirs,
That's
we
good.
would just automatically go with whatever their current is.
That's
So they
good.
can change it,
Yeah.
we don't have to.
Okay, good clarification. I thought that was being adopted in the ordinance.
She just puts it in there for.
Yeah, and I apologize when I referred to it. I missed
She's very good.
yeah. I just meant for reference, but
Yeah.
I wasn't hearing what you were asking.
That
So
helps out a ton.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
keep going as we have it.
awesome.
And the fees do have to be reasonable, Mayor. I'm supposing that the fire department is looking at these and that these are reasonable. If they were, ours is in Layton, we're about $150. And so it's, I'm looking at this going, that's a bargain. That's a deal.
Yeah.
So I didn't even
I
question.
was at the county commission meeting when they adopted this and basically they weren't charging anything
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more than nothing, but it's a whole lot less than what it could be. Yeah.
2 years ago, the county came to us and wanted to charge the city more for municipal services to the county, and that was kind of our feedback. You're not even collecting your own fee. Why are you gonna charge us more when you're doing this countywide? You know what I mean? It's a countywide service. You should collect it. So they went back and figured out this almost pays for their, one of their positions, because he almost literally only does inspections. And it is low, but he's a part-time or, yeah.
And
Yeah, so it's a good move on their part to at least have them pay for themselves as they go.
puts fuel in his tank too. He was just doing it all.
Yeah, but definitely didn't consider inflation.
Okay, item 3. Is there any more discussion on item 2?
We're good.
Morgan County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan.
So I can introduce this one. We applied for a grant to get backup generators for this, a natural gas generator for this building. So in a power outage that it would keep our internet and everything running. And when we applied, they told us that we were not eligible because the county needed to update their mitigation plan. And since Austin started, he has done an amazing job of getting that done in a year or less. About a year. So as Austin's assistant, I think he's doing an amazing job. That's what I call myself. No, but basically our grant is pending. Our grant application was pending this renewal of the mitigation plan. Long process. They came to county meetings. It's so big, we don't even have a copy of it because it addresses every possible thing other than a pandemic. I'm just kidding. But anyways, if we adopt that tonight and we owe them our resolution tomorrow, then our application still, it won't get tossed out. We've asked for an extension. He did an amazing job to get this thing adopted by the end of the year, which that's what we're counting this meeting is. It's as close as you can do, but.
Totally good. He's expecting the resolution tomorrow, so.
Yeah, so anyway, that's where we're at. And that's what it means to us. One, that the county has a mitigation plan, but 2, it makes our application for that valid, yeah. Because we're not eligible if we don't have an adopted mitigation plan, so.
Austin talks about updates. What has changed from the old plan?
We basically just revamped the whole thing. We went through, and we looked at everything from avalanches to landslides to wildland fire, urban interface, flooding. Flooding is a big one that we're dealing with, highway events, how to deal with them. Even collisions with animals out on the interstate and the hot spots where there's collisions with animals on the interstate. So basically, we went through, identified all the hazards that could potentially happen and how to mitigate them. You know, how do you mitigate an earthquake? Well, you bring things up to code as best you can, but you can't stop the earth from shaking. And so what we did is here's all of our problems, and these are some of the things we can do to mitigate. One of the big things in the county is has to do with wildland fires and going through and cutting back the undergrowth in that wildland urban interface. So, water is one of the parts too. Something that affected the city that, you know, with water and issues with water. So we brought that into the plan as well. Of how to make sure our infrastructure is good and how to deal with low water years. So
Sounds like a lot of work.
yeah, there was a lot to it. Luckily, the Bear River Association of Governments, they've got a group that's what they do. And so I was able to work with them.
Information.
And I would just add, Austin, I think that our plan is just based on a lot more information than plans had been in the past, a lot more data, a lot of GIS stuff. They looked at, fuel sources on that, water flows, drainages, so typically when these plans are developed, it's like, well, we know we're in an earthquake zone. It's going to be bad. You know, it's not like, here's your scenario.
Here's your fault lines.
Yep, and here's the potentials. So that, you know, the mitigation strategies might be similar, but a lot of work, I think, went into the actual hazards. So I just
Who,
appreciated that
Who
process.
asks for or requires the plan?
The FEMA, and then the state administers it at the state level. So it affects people's insurance and
But it's
It's
also has. to be
grants and-
There's. You've got to have an up-to-date active pre-disaster mitigation plan to get any federal grants.
FEMA help in the event of a disaster, would this need to be in place?
Absolutely.
go.
it does.
So we could go ahead and apply for this grant for a generator, a backup generator.
it's already been applied for.
I think it's applied. I think the
How's it look?
state's just holding it in limbo till
Yeah, we don't,
you guys decide.
it's, we don't know till to the end, you know, how that gets divvied out, but at least the first time I applied, it just got kicked out. So this is the second time we've applied.
Because we didn't have this in.
There's a,
And we're cutting it as close as we can, asking for extensions, but we,
Davis County's kind of in the same boat. There's a few cities in Davis County that me and my counterpart down in Davis County, we're getting this all finished up. He might be like a day or two ahead of me, but Davis County, there's a lot of cities in the same boat you guys are in. As far as getting the plan implemented and getting their grants.
Is there any more discussion?
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Thank you.
Generator.
they're all programmed out.
And we're cooking through
How many-
agenda tonight.
How many pages is the mitigation plan, Austin? anyway?
It's only 284.
So we did 5 or
If I get a little insomnia, I'll look you up.
Yeah. A lot of it's a lot of numbers and just data. A lot of just data.
Pop quiz tomorrow.
Bring it on.
Okay, any more discussion? Item 4, appointment of planning commission members. I left my note on my desk, but I think I can remember it. There we go. George Hopkins, he resigned after his term. And I asked for Jim Brown to stay on as a member for a 4-year term, which he agreed to. Jason Ackett, I asked him to stay on for a 4-year term, and he accepted. Both of them were, I believe, Denise, up this year or last year.
Jim and Jason, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mark was
An alternate, and he said he'd be happy to come on as a member for a 4-year term.
That's to replace.
George. Mhm. So I wanted to just ask, because we'll need another alternate, if you have any ideas or.
Do we have an alternate now? Do we have one?
Mark was, and we had.
So do we have,
Dan.
so do
Dan
we,
Dixon. And Dix.
so Dan still is. So you're down an
Yes.
alternate.
I don't have a name specific tonight, but when we appointed the alternates before, I said to Ray, here's a list of maybe 10 people that were female. I'd like to see if we couldn't get some representation from in a gender perspective.
Yeah.
And so I had 10 ladies that I felt could serve, and I'd be happy to provide that again.
So the way I understand it, the mayor appoints them.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay.
With the advice and consent of the council, so.
Yes.
Approved by the council.
Yes, you'd have to. But you go do all of the, are you willing, asking and lining them up. And you present them, you talk to all of them first, and then you brought them to here for.
Last time we voted, interesting, do we need to vote, Gary?
On this, yes,
Okay,
it's
so,
a resolution.
no, I
Oh.
understand the resolution, but on an alternate, I'm sorry, I was ahead of myself. Can we just appoint another alternate, or do we need to vote? Ray had us vote on, say, 4 people, pick the 2 highest get to be alternates.
You could just appoint Jetty.
Yeah, you can change the appointment once they're approved.
Yeah, I mean, because I had people that knew me call and ask about the process, and I thanked them for the consideration. I didn't realize we were voting, and as it turned out, they didn't get elected. So I think it'd be more comfortable if we, if maybe you brought the names to us, we approved them and they're appointed,
So.
rather than to ask somebody to serve and then say, oh, just kidding.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Or make it a political process when it's simply just a willingness to serve type position. I mean, that's
Yeah.
hard to go through that
Yeah.
whole process when
Yes.
it's.
Yeah, we actually had 4 that he had invited and for 2 positions. And the 2 highest vote getters
The
were,
2 highest
Dan and-
getters here in the council.
yes, were Dan and Mark.
He might have done that because he had multiple options, which doesn't always happen. There's not always is there that much interest. So maybe when he went and asked, he got more feedback and said, well, let's just see who the
So,
council wants. But
so those names came through the council.
Were approved by the council, yes. Well, and actually voted on in this case, but
But the suggestions to serve in that position, they came from the
Ray.
council. Or just from Ray.
No, the Mayor Little did essentially
Ray
what
opened it up to
what
the-
you're just doing right
yeah,
now.
Ray opened it up to the council.
You're asking us, do you
Yeah.
have any?
Said, do you have anyone that you recommend?
He essentially did what you're doing right now. Do you have any recommendations?
In which he received recommendations.
Sure.
Is that a thing we do here, or is that just something you call me, or?
yeah, they can just give them to you. Like you said, you provided a list, so
Okay.
just take them offline and.
I mean, even tomorrow, if anybody had a name, they could
Yeah.
give it
Call
to
you
you and then
Get a hold of you.
Okay.
the council's had, I mean, in my mind, the council would have had their say or their input, and then you choose one and talk to them. If they're willing to serve, bring it back and say, yeah, we've got an alternate.
It's agreed.
Yeah,
to
okay,
serve,
and
and
then-
That's definitely the way I'd like to see it, is
Yeah.
from the input of the council.
Yeah.
And if we have more than one, then we would do the same thing, vote whoever. Because we've got one individual, not 2. So,
You're only appointing one. This one.
okay.
Yeah, that's actually the first time I've ever seen it done that way, that he did it last,
Oh,
which is to bring it to the council and then have 4 applicants and then have the council vote on. It's not improper, but it's just the first time. Usually the mayor just brings a person and the council votes. And if there isn't consensus on the person, the mayor will go back again and choose somebody else and. come
We
against.
vote on the resolution.
Right,
Not-
Yeah, my
Yeah.
point was the way it was handled, was
right.
done before was uncomfortable for 2 good people that would have been
Yeah.
served very well. And we're not going to take you.
Well, I personally feel like combined, we have a lot more knowledge. And
right.
yeah,
So what you're saying, Gary, is typically we would give names to the mayor look at those names, then the mayor would essentially make the recommendation. Council didn't approve.
Didn't vote on it. No, the council approved. The mayor would put it on a resolution.
Right.
Same way you got it tonight.
Right.
And then he didn't put 4 on a resolution, and then you choose
Yeah, right.
2 of them after you have a discussion with the council. If you want to discuss them, generally you could discuss them in a closed meeting if you wanted to discuss your applicants, because it's a personnel issue, an appointment issue, but the mayor, once he's put it on the resolution, then the council votes on it. It's not a,
so the next step would be for next meeting. We could have a name suggestions. And then in a closed meeting, we can discuss those names. And I know the mayor might make the appointment, but I'd rather have what Ray had. Majority takes it.
Yep.
Yeah, well, the next step would be for us to give you some names.
Yeah.
I've got one change for Denise on the resolution.
I know what to.
You already told her. I'm sure it was just a test, right? You wanted to see if I
Some
caught it.
resolutions she started before she left on vacation in December. He was the mayor at the time she started.
It was legitimate in December.
She only makes one mistake a year, so that's good.
Oh, wow.
Oh, boy, she's got my restart.
So I guess we could call him and have him sign, right?
Yeah. She's already got his signature.
Yeah, you can stamp it. Okay, we've still got 12 minutes.
Portfolios.
Oh, yes. So portfolio assignments.
You get that? See what's under your name. Yeah.
That must be.
Yeah, I don't know, that exists. I mean, does your recreation board exist?
Maybe they're on your own, as far as I'm concerned. Well, I told them as soon as they figured out their life to get back with us, and I don't think we've heard back with them. So. I don't know where that's ever gone,
The recreation?
the rec board,
They said they disbanded it.
they did, so. Well, we all walked out. I don't know what they ever, if they decided to make it a county department or what they did, I don't
I
know.
thought that's what, my understanding was they just said, we're doing it as a county only, like it's our
Yeah, I think
deal.
it's county. I think it's basically county rec department.
Well, it's an easy one for you, Eric.
Yeah, I got that made with that one. It's easy.
What other committees do we want to blow
Yeah,
up? Send Eric.
Well,
Exciting meeting.
really, well,
What? Yeah, I got you.
I talked to Jeffrey the other day on a water advisory board and I didn't realize what that is. So I'm up to date on that now. So is there any verbiage as far as everybody satisfied or?
I know with mine, but are these with the other council members the same as last year or the last period? Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff, what does RPO stand for?
rollover protection. Oh, no, that's ROP.
Regional Planning Organization. So the Regional Planning Organization, I also heard,
Is,
well,
Jeff, RPO.
I also heard that one went away, but was never brought to a meeting to discuss. And those participants that signed the agreement, they never have an opportunity to vote the board disbanded. So there's a little bit of homework to do on that one. That may or may not even exist anymore.
Regional what?
Planning organization.
Who makes up that?
So we were a party to, the county was, so it was the city and the county, and then it was Huntsville Town and Weber County. So the idea is that the Wasatch back portion of Weber County and Morgan County would make a transportation plan together, which we did. And then get projects on a list so that they'd be competitive for grants. And yep, and it met, the plan was created and then it kind of went through some leadership changes and it was difficult to get representation from a couple of people, no big deal. So they said, hey, let's just wait for this new election cycle to happen at the county. And the election cycle happened and yeah, and then the RPO and then the group never came back together, but through that process, we paid Wasatch Front Regional Council joint, everybody paid and got some technical assistance from Julie Bjornstad, if you remember her helping us out. She's been really helpful. She attended the meetings, did the minutes, recorded the meetings, and I never did hear officially from the county, but I was in an economic development meeting where they were saying as one of their accomplishments, they got rid of the RPO. So congratulations, news to us.
Pat themselves on the back, right?
Yeah,
Only been in existence 2 years, hadn't it?
Yeah,
Very long.
yeah. And, you know, it served its purpose and was good. You know, I mean, I don't see any problem with having a regional transportation plan, but they said, what I heard is that we decided to have a Morgan County one only, but that hasn't met either, so. Anyway. That may or may not be an assignment.
I was just gonna see if Austin needs to stay to the rest of it. He's probably got a million other places to go. If you wanna,
You think Austin has places to be?
yeah, I think so.
I'm just-
We'll vote on the resolution in the regular meeting, but most of the discussion has been now.
Unless-
Feel free to sit it. You're welcome to thumbs up. You're welcome to stay, but no obligations.
If you,
I'm not part of the county council or commission anymore, so.
could you at least leave a quote for the newspaper?
Probably not that can go in the newspaper.
Probably not one.
Thank you.
Thank you
For all
guys.
your work.
And we'll just, I'll do it tomorrow.
Ty, do you think COG, council, you think
Thank you
they'll
guys.
be next Monday on Martin Luther King Day?
Probably not.
I got thinking about that, probably not.
Attendance might be low. Yeah, we're hosting. Yep.
This year, right?
We're the ones, so we'll have the meetings here,
Yep.
And didn't I hear that was canceled, Denise?
COG, it's on Martin Luther King Day. I
Because
know
of
that.
Martin Luther King Day?
I would think
It's
so.
on the 24th.
Okay, yeah, because typically it's on the third Monday, so.
Usually it's on the third Monday, but because of the holiday, it's.
Okay.
in the 24th.
You got some quick training?
Sure. The very first thing, Jerry Stevenson used to say, the very first thing a new mayor or any other council member has to learn is how to count to 3. Right? Because without 3, you don't do anything. The city doesn't function. In our form of government, what form of government are we in? Anybody know? 2 choices. There's a strong mayor form of government,
I was gonna say I know the.
On the council.
and there's a 6-member council form of government. Which one?
We're in
6-member council. Yeah, but that's a good guess because our mayor operates to guide the meetings, to he handles his the things he handles are specifically identified in state law, and they look very, very similar to the things that you handle when you're a strong mayor form of government. But a strong mayor form of government has to be put into place by an election of the people. And it's the most complicated form of government. There's only about 7 in the state that have it. Salt Lake, you can guess where they are. Just look at every dysfunctional form of government you've got out there, and you know exactly which ones they are.
After that, we should list it.
Salt Lake, Logan, Ogden, not Layton, Provo, and West Jordan. Anyway,
That's
There's-
good to learn.
there's a group of them. And there is a separation of powers in that form of government. In this form of government, 6-member council, all of you hold the power, both administrative and legislative powers. So you're able to make laws and you're able to enforce your own laws that you make. And so you wear different hats at different times. The hat you wear for legislative requires that you make decisions based on a rational basis. Reasons that upon which reasonable minds could differ. So if you have something comes before you and you make a decision on it, for example, the ordinance tonight, and you have a rational basis for doing that, and your rational basis is what? You want to keep subdivisions, new subdivisions, annexing into the city, and you want to keep you know what, but at the same time, you want to provide, that's a rational basis. That's a perfect rational basis. And a rational basis means just a little better than a preponderance. So in other words, you just feel a little better about it than not. Okay. And it's really the easiest standard to comply with. That's legislative, and you have that legislative power. The administrative power that you have is to enforce your ordinances, but you have constraints in the administrative power. You're constrained by your ordinance. And if you start to move out of that ordinance, then you're likely to be sued over it, because administrative powers are what in the strong mayor council form of government, the mayor has in a strong mayor council form of government. Their legislative body has just legislative powers. The nice thing about you is you can divide them up any way you want. A lot of cities, they give assignments to people on the way you do to serve on different committees to represent the city. You can represent it either as a legislator or administrator on those committees. But when you're acting as such, you're going to be held to the standard that applies to that. So as we go through the agenda tonight, you take a look at, I'll make this real quick, but you take a look at the items on the agenda. Oops, I don't have a written agenda. But anything that deals with an ordinance, passing of an ordinance, or taxes is likely a legislative decision on your part. Anything dealing with contracts or anything dealing with resolutions, anything that starts with a resolution is likely, is most likely administrative. And so you've got a set of rules, a stricter set of rules for administrative than you do legislative. Legislative, it's really important. Ex parte communications, for example, communications outside of the council. You're elected. People are going to come up to you in the grocery store, at church. They come up to you and say, what about this? Are you really deciding this in this way? That type of thing. Can you listen to them?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure you can. You're elected to do that. Planning commission is a little different. They're elected to support the ordinance of the city. And so the planning commissioners really ought not to be doing that. Ex parte communications are things that they probably ought not to be involved in, because you can get into a mess if you start to listen to this group of neighbors and then this developer's over there saying, you listened to them and you didn't hear me out, that type of thing. You can get into the same kind of mess. And so in a legislative action, if you have taken input from people outside of the city or outside of your group here, the best thing to do is first, make sure you acknowledge that with the council, the next meeting. Eric, you met with that group of homeowners, and that group of homeowners said, we don't like you guys because you're always approving higher density. Can't stand it. And so you'll tell the council that, and the council will go, okay, now we've got that information. We're good to go. Or the other way of handling it is just simply to say to this group of individuals, you know what? This is going to be discussed at council meeting the other day, next week. I'd like all of the council members to hear what you got to say about this. So would you come to council meeting and express yourself? So you're not shutting them down, but you're giving them an opportunity to speak to the whole council as a whole. You can get cornered on if you listen to one group and then you find out what that one group is telling you isn't consistent with what the other group, what the developer, for example, was really going to do. And what they'll do is they'll stand up there and they'll say, well, Tony, you were at the meeting with us the other day and you were shaking your head the whole entire time, agreeing with what we said. And so you get backed into a corner. So, but can you listen? Yes, you can. That's what you're paid to. On administrative determinations, not so much, because you're stuck with the ordinance. If your ordinance doesn't give you permission to do that thing, you can't move outside of the ordinance. Good illustration was city council person, brand new city council person in a meeting. Ivory came in, they had a subdivision approved. They were getting ready to, a piece of that subdivision was a road that goes out to the highway. UDOT would not let them have that road to the highway. So they had to figure out another way of getting out. It was less expensive. One of the council members in her, in her imagination that she was able to do this, said to Ivory, well, listen, you weren't able to build the more expensive road. So how about you put in a park over here? And the answer should have been from the rest of the council, does the ordinance let you ask for a park from this guy for a subdivision? No.
Wasn't that in the news?
Yeah. It should have been if it wasn't. But anyway, so you got to be careful. If it would be helpful, I can work with Denise to mark your decisions as administrative or legislative, but they're really easy to identify. Ordinance, legislative, administrative, and we'll talk more about that. We're out of time, but I hope that helps just a little.
So, yeah,
Primary.
Gary, that's probably the best explanation I've heard, to date. Was that recorded, Denise? So we,
It'll be on YouTube.
they're good. So we could memorialize that, right?
I'm sure I'll have 1,000 hits by the end of the night.
We could codify that and make it available.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
And
At the work meeting, we don't need to adjourn, correct? Adjourn it.
Oh, that was louder.
what he needs is, I can't remember what they call that thing. There's a wooden piece that
Yeah.
goes under that. Isn't that right?
Right up there with the I got free speech.
Above, it was better,
Oh, you guys are terrible.
better.
You know that.
just not used to change. Just don't let me vote.
It goes down the line.
I didn't turn off a set of warrants. I don't think they're mine. So I got. I always like to go easily like your last. You're a little more thorough.
Jeff, can you give the pledge?
You bet.
He'll give it.
Can do, yeah.
Was that a good one? Well, we welcome everybody here in the room and those that are observing from another source. We'd like to start this meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. And we'll have an opening prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we gather together at the commencement of this Morgan City Council meeting, we wish to take this opportunity which we have to express our thanks and gratitude unto thee for our many blessings. We're grateful, Father, for this beautiful valley in which we live and for the freedoms and blessings which we enjoy. We're grateful unto thee for the moisture that we've received recently, which will allow us to fill our reservoirs and our aquifers. And we pray that thou might continue to bless us with more moisture as the winter season progresses. Grateful for the opportunity we have to serve, and Father, we would ask that thou might bless us this night as we serve in the capacity of a city council. That we might have thy spirit to be with us, to guide and direct us. We might make those decisions which is helpful and beneficial to those that we serve, and that we might always act in a responsible manner and always do those things which would be thy will. Father, we're grateful for our freedoms. We're grateful for those who have secured them for us in the past and continue to do so. Yes, that thou might bless those who are in the armed forces, that thou might protect and watch over them as they serve and preserve those freedoms which we enjoy. Father, we again ask at this time that we might have thy spirit guide and direct us this evening. We ask these things in the name of thy son, Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you, Jeff and Tony.
You bet.
Right. Are there any public comments? No. Let's move on to the consent agenda, and we're looking at the warrants, which consists, I just learned today, from invoices from the city that took from the December 10th, 21 to July 10th, 2022. Is there any discussion on that?
I've got a couple of questions for Ty. Page 1, the civic review for $5,000+ enhanced subscription. What was that one?
So that's an annual subscription. That's our building permit and subdivision software.
Oh,
Move
okay.
that to an online process.
Okay.
So we've started there, and then any other forms that we want to do online, we can add without any additional charge. So, dog licenses, whatever's in our fee schedule. So it's that's what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Denise, you may know this one. I saw about a half a dozen refunds, maybe 2 or 3 for business licenses. Just seemed like quite a bit going on there. Any thought on that?
I have no idea what.
Okay.
I can look them up specifically or ask, but
Yeah, we could do it after.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's all I had. Thank you.
sometimes that's just an overpayment or they got charged twice. Sometimes.
Yeah, it just seemed like, quite a few.
Sure.
Wondered if it was a trend or something, or the end of the year, perhaps. I don't know.
No, we usually have 1 or 2, every payroll, but this is a full month's worth of invoices, so that might
Okay.
be the biggest difference. It's just that it's a full month instead of a 2-week period.
Bigger window.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You gotta unmute your mic if you want to ask them.
Now may I ask a question?
Sure.
I have page 5. I don't have the copy, I just wrote a note down. Is it, I think it was called Sweep in Utah.
Mhm.
Is that a purchase or is that
Service.
That's a service. We didn't purchase a sweep or anything.
No.
Okay,
So we have a contract for sweeping services, so that's just one week, or, they just do all the roads. We surplused our street sweeper this year. We decided to do it on a contract basis. And then we have a little broom attachment for the little cleanup, after our own road projects, or if we gotta go just clean out some curb and gutters after a storm. We can do on a smaller scale, but not the full. That street sweeper is a maintenance.
Doesn't the
Nightmare.
council do that? Yeah.
Dave, be careful.
and then,
Go get to know your community a little bit.
and then on page 8, again, there was something there for West Coast Code Consultants. Is that,
That's our,
they do our codification? Okay.
our code book, but let me look at that one. That's page 8.
I wrote down page 8. Like I said, I'm.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yep, right about in the middle there, Ty, right there.
Oh, mine's on the next page. Sorry. Oh, that's our inspections. So that's WC3. That's what
Okay.
that's how I know them by. So that's why I wanted to make sure I looked at that, but that's our inspection services. So we call them WC3, but it's West Code Consultants. That's why it's so
Okay.
building inspections,
Oh, okay. Okay,
right? So
okay.
building permits pay for all those inspections.
Okay, so that's what that means.
Mhm.
I got a couple, Ty.
Okay.
On the, I seen from Meter Works. That's just, I think that's for water meters. Is that correct?
Should be, let me look, which page?
Oh,
Make sure it's coded correctly.
yeah, it's on page 3. 7834, Meter Works for meters, 31 and change. Right there. I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's for water meters.
Yeah, those are
We're
water
still
meters.
just updating the water meters.
Mhm.
And then I also noticed, and maybe could be for later, but it looks like you had some money in there for the SCADA for the substation. How's that? Is that coming along pretty good? That
Mhm.
project? Good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's for later, but I just noticed that too. I'm excited about that. I think that'll be a good addition to the
System.
system. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just getting started, just getting designed. So,
Is that design or is that actually buying some stuff?
oh, this Power Incorporated one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just SCADA design. So,
Okay.
that's more kind of power engineering. And
I was
we're,
looking at the one on the instrument control system on page 2. 5722.
okay, yeah, that one was designed, but I think this is just the,
The 5722 on page 2, about middle of the page.
Instrument control.
Yep, instrument control company. For 33,427.
Yeah, that's the power specific one
Okay, perfect.
for the substation. So
Okay. Awesome.
Can SCADA measure the amount of flow from a well, from our wells?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But you need the meter. on
yeah, you have to
there.
have the flow meter, but yeah, all that gets recorded and monitored on SCADA remotely. So instead of having to go up and do a read, it just transfers it all to the. So kind of where we're at on that is we just finished our fiber installation to every one of our wells, pumps, tanks.
Perfect.
Yep. So we use the CARES Act for that project. And every site's programmed exactly the same, and they all tie back to this building. So all of our fiber comes back to this building on an intranet. So this building is the only internet connection now that provides internet to all of our other shops. And each one of those connection sites has its own box with 3 different ports in it, one for cameras, one for Wi-Fi, and one for SCADA. They're all programmed the same. So now when we build that out, we can add a camera, a Wi-Fi hotspot for our guys' network, and SCADA throughout the whole city, and it'll all come right back to here. So we're just starting that next phase for getting SCADA built out now. So some of that's equipment. You'll see quite a few more SCADA bills as we transfer from the radio feed to the fiber. So even up on the Mahogany Ridge tank, we have fiber that goes up to that tank, which we don't have power to. We have fiber, and so that's an interesting one too, where they're resizing the solar panel to be able to operate
Yeah.
the whole thing up there. So
Right. Because in my previous employment, we had sites that were just solar, but you can get controllers and do things to actually run.
So we have the ability to pretty accurately measure our outflows from our springs and.
So,
obviously our-
yeah, we still have some work to do on the meters and the flow meters and depth meters and whatever they're called.
It's called a transducer. down under
Transducer, yeah.
Mhm.
So we're still getting some of those in place. But everything else that, as good as if there's a meter there or anything else that's on our SCADA, then it'll connect right up. So we're entering that next phase, but pretty soon we'll have a lot better real-time information and be able to even operate stuff, remotely. So I'm pretty excited.
Good.
Sorry, that probably.
Yeah, that didn't have anything to do with.
Yeah,
warrants.
that probably needed to be somewhere else, but sorry, but it just caught my attention right.
That was good. I mean, it's good to talk about the payment. I like that opportunity to talk about what it accomplishes, not just the expense that we had. So I kind of kind of gave the full picture as well.
Okay. All right, let's get back to,
Any more discussion, comments?
we didn't have any minutes, did we? That seems,
Do you need a motion to approve the warrants?
yep.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we approve the warrants, 12/10/2021 through January 10th, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
Tony made a motion on the warrants 12/10/2021 through 1/10/2022. That is aye.
Yes.
Oh, it could be all in favor.
Eric seconded.
Yeah, you'll have to say Eric seconded.
Eric seconded. Thank you for helping me.
We'll just call for a vote.
And all in favor of,
Aye.
Aye.
and those who disapprove? Looks like it passed unanimously, right? Okay, if we go to our active agenda, which we had in our work meeting. Item A. Gary, do you want to?
Item A is an ordinance dealing specifically with a limitation on extraterritorial service in Morgan City. Morgan City, of course, has limited resources like other cities do. And so there was a concern that development occur in an orderly fashion. And the only way really to ensure that it does develop in an orderly fashion would be to make sure that undeveloped property comes in as annexed property, because then it would be within the jurisdiction of the city. It would need to go through the planning commission, and it would need to comply with all of the requirements for providing service, public service. Pipes would have to be the right size. You wouldn't have pipes running along the back of a lot, for example. You'd have them running in the street where they should be run. And we've had experiences where we actually have had applications, and those applications have a lateral maybe running 400 feet, if you remember one of them, across 3 lots, which were all separately sold to different property owners. And so it creates all kinds of problems when you allow that. So the 2 sections of the code, the 2 sections of the code that we're dealing with are the code section that previously existed dealing with extraterritorial service of water. And the other one is extraterritorial service of sewer service. And both of them only apply to projects where they're existing, they're improved property. The sewer system doesn't say it quite as plain as what we would like it to be said. And so in the work meeting before this, we thought we would add I think it's an item D, isn't it? D. And the D would essentially say what the water provision of B1 up above says, B1 or B2 up above, where it says that if it is not developed property, that it doesn't come in, that it would not be eligible for water service. I just got to get to the.
Did we add an E to the sewer?
It was E, not D. We already had a D, right? My computer shut down, so.
So number 2 is just gonna be D in the other section.
Yeah, let me just get that for you. Okay, so okay. I've lost you big time here. Yeah, that might help. I've lost your. Okay. So if you go to up to the top to the water service provision, at the very top in section 8.02.100 in subsection B. And so it would say, number 1 there says the property to be served shall only be considered if there's an existing structure. And that's where we put a period. And we would use that language as subsection E in 8.04.100. We would add a section E that would say the property to be served shall only be considered if there's an existing structure, period. And so.
Gary, what would you think about 2? I mean, just the number 2 there, no new construction outside of the city boundaries shall receive approval of sanitary sewer service as well. I mean, you include both the 1 and the 2.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. No new construction outside the city boundaries shall receive approval of an application.
Yeah.
I think is the way we put it. So. And then we could even let the following sentence, new construction shall be required to annex to the city before receiving sewer service.
Okay.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's,
We added all that.
I mean,
Everybody
that's,
okay with that?
that's clear.
I don't know how the heck we're gonna make a motion with that, but
I think.
it's stated in the work meeting, according to as per Gary.
Yes.
I'm like, how are you gonna make a motion?
Or just say Denise knows. So it would be, yeah, there we are. Number one, the first sentence to the end of the sentence, Denise in B, subsection B in 100. So it says the property to be served shall only be considered if there is an existing structure, period. And delete the rest of it. And this is for the sewer, right? We're going to leave this in the
Yes.
water,
Right.
Right.
but we're going to add an additional provision to the sewer. And then it would start with number two. Everything in number two would also be added onto that sentence. And that would be,
Number two, you need to change from water to sewer.
yeah, need to change from water to sewer, of course. And then it would be not E in the sewer. Mhm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, good.
Thanks, Mayor. Any other questions on? It was pretty well discussed before.
There's our motion.
Yeah, it is per.
I will make a motion that we adopt an amendment to approve of an amendment to Title 8, Chapter 8.02 and 8.04, Sections 8.02.100 and 8.04.100 of the Morgan City Code regarding the provisions of water and sewer service outside the city limits, which is Ordinance 2201, with the following changes: that under 802.100, we add a section, subsection E, that would state that
It's one.
the water,
In the water, paragraph B, subsection 1.
but it's,
Oh, that's new language.
but it's all in the same ordinance, right?
Yeah. It's
Uh,
in- It wouldn't have to state the change in 100 and then
So they're,
I think 802 remains unchanged.
Doesn't change.
We're not touching.
I was just changing
we're just changing
802, 100.
And we make Gary's changes in 804.
8.04.100.
Yeah.
Stuff from it.
With a new subsection E, that would state the property to be served shall only be considered if there's an existing structure. And two, no new construction outside of the city boundaries shall receive approval of the preliminary application. New construction shall be required to annex to the city before receiving sewer service.
In the sewer service, it's not preliminary application, it's just.
Just application, I'm sorry, I apologize. Stand corrected, application.
Yeah, I'll second that, Tony. It's got it.
Did we capture that?
I think you got it pretty good.
Nailed it.
That's impressive.
They're on it.
That was a test.
Okay, so Tony made a motion. Do I have to repeat all you just said? Okay,
Just referred to as stated.
as stated. The ordinances, do I read this top, correct?
Yes.
An ordinance amending Title 8, Chapters 802 and 8.04, Sections 802, 8.02.100, and Section 8.04.100 of the Morgan City Code regarding the provisions of water and sewer services outside city limits, providing for repealer, providing for severability, and providing for an immediate effective date.
With the changes that Tony.
With the changes that Tony has
So
Indicated.
So eloquently indicated.
So eloquently indicated. You did great. Now we vote.
Any discussion on the motion?
Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just am glad to get this to clear it up for future councils, future stuff, so we have pretty solid line in the sand of what the city is expecting and to do, so we don't have to guess for the next application that comes in. So I think this is a great move. Thank you.
And I think it also protects the city,
Oh, yeah.
and it makes it a lot easier to have this in place so that it's solid and we don't have any debate over it. So that I think's very good. Let's see.
Now I need to vote.
Roll call vote.
Yep, it's roll call.
So we'll have a roll call vote. Councilman London,
Aye.
Councilman Wardell,
Aye.
Councilman Richens,
Aye.
Councilman Turner,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander.
Aye.
It's like this ordinance, do we call it?
Yes.
Ordinance 2201 was passed unanimous. Okay. Item B, amendment to Title I, Chapter 1.15 of the Morgan City Code by amending fees of the Consolidated Fee Schedule, Ordinance 22-02. Can I refer to you? Sure.
So you're all familiar that we bring our fee schedule back periodically as there's changes. This one just refers to the county adopted a fee schedule for fire inspection services that they also provide for, or some of our processes require fire inspection. And so the fee schedule just indicates some of those services that are impacted by the new fee schedule. And just so that we keep up with, what we're also being charged and just the actual costs of services. And so that's kind of what this intends to accomplish.
So I should have asked this in the work session, I guess. Our city's citizens are not paying a county and then us. We get billed from the county to the city, not to the actual person for these fees?
Well, we have to make that agreement, like process wise, how that happens. But right now they haven't been double charged, but they haven't been charged
At
at all. So what we're saying is if it's something on ours that requires a service, that we would just collect it when that happens. And then the county would, and we're anticipating that would have an agreement that they would just bill us for each inspection that they do, and we would have already
Okay.
captured that money. But if it's an inspection that's not required through a city process, the county would just bill directly. So if it's a fire inspection or an annual, inspection, then they would just bill. For example, they inspect the school all the time. That doesn't ever come through our process. So they would just bill the school directly for
Okay.
that service. So these are just the services that we anticipate affect our permitting process.
Okay.
So
Any more discussion?
Mayor, I'd move to approve ordinance 22-02, an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 1.15 of the Morgan City Code by amending fees of the Consolidated Fee Schedule, providing for repealer, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Alexander made a motion on ordinance 22-02. an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 1.15 of the Morgan City Code by amending fees of the consolidated fee schedule, providing for repealer, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. Council Richens seconded the motion. Let's see. Through here, does that? Okay, Councilmember London,
Aye.
Councilmember Wardell,
Aye.
Councilmember Turner,
Aye.
Councilmember Richens,
Aye.
Councilmember Alexander.
Aye.
Here's that the ordinance passed unanimously. Appreciate your patience, gentlemen. Let's move to item C on the active agenda. Adoption of Morgan County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan 2021 Update Resolution 22-01. Ty, I'll also refer.
So a mitigation plan is something that you're supposed to have a current one adopted. Our county just went through that process. It was a year-long process to update the county's mitigation plan. They just finished. They did adopt it as a county. So it's already been approved by the county commission. And then because we're an entity in the county, we also adopt it, and it keeps us in compliance with FEMA standards and makes us eligible for grants and resources and those sort of things. We do have an active grant application on file. It's pending the adoption of this plan before we're even considered. So that's kind of where we're at. A lot of work went into it. I did participate in some of the sessions during the planning process. It was pretty thorough, and I was pretty pleased with the plan that they put together.
Is there any discussion on this resolution 22-01?
Mayor, I will make a motion that we adopt resolution 22-01, a resolution of Morgan City adopting the Morgan County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan 2021 update.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilman London made a motion to adopt the resolution of Morgan City adopting the Morgan County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan 2021 update. And Councilman Wardell seconded. Is there any further discussion? Councilman London?
Aye.
Councilman Wardell?
Aye.
Councilman Turner?
Aye.
Councilman Richens?
Aye.
Councilman Alexander?
Aye.
Looks like resolution 22-01 passed unanimous. Okay, the next item, we have appointment of planning commission members, resolution 2203. I found them. Resolution 22-03, a resolution appointing individuals to the planning commission and receiving the advice and consent of the city council. Is there any discussion? Can mayor give comment
Okay.
on this?
Sure.
Okay. Just for our information, George Francis's term came up.
George Francis?
George Hopkins, sorry, goodness.
If he did, he was resurrected.
He got resurrected, huh? If George is watching, I'll hear this. Oh, that's a good one. I actually
It just
served
gets
with
better,
George
Steve.
Francis on the planning
Yeah.
commission.
It'll get better.
Jim Brown consented to serve another 4 years as a member. And Jason Ackett, he consented to serve another 4 years. And Mark Francis to serve as a 4-year member and move him from alternate. And then as we talked in the work meeting, suggestions from the city council to the mayor, and we'll go through those appointments and take care of that at the next city council. Is there any discussion? George Francis?
Sorry.
Mayor, I'd move to approve resolution 22-03, a resolution appointing individuals to the planning commission and receiving the advice and consent of the city council. And just for the record, I'd also note that recognize the work session that a lot of these have been discussed if anybody needs to make reference to it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, resolution 2203. We have a motion from Councilman Member Alexander and a second from Council Member Richens. Turner. Oh, I'm really bad today, ain't I? Are there any other discussions? We'll have a vote. Council Member London.
Aye.
Council Member Wardell.
Aye.
Council Member Turner.
Aye.
Council Member Richens.
Aye.
Council Member Alexander.
Aye.
The vote on resolution 22-03 was unanimous.
Mayor, may I make a comment here? So it's occurred to me as, as I've said, I think the work meeting is a great idea. I'm totally for a work meeting, but it's occurred to me sometimes that perhaps if somebody just sort of joined us at the beginning of our city council meeting, they may think we just fly through this agenda, that, we haven't given it any thought. We're just basically rubber stamping everything. I just guess I want to go on record by saying that this is all discussed thoroughly in the work meeting. So sometimes it may seem like we're flying through these agenda items in the regular city council meeting rather quickly, but that's not true. It's been vetted and we've discussed it thoroughly and beforehand and in the work meeting. So I just wanted to, now that we're back to a work meeting, I just wanted to make that comment. So.
Thank you. Item 11, city reports and business. We'll turn that over to our city manager.
I think since our last meeting, we had our Christmas party. Just wanted to thank those that came from the council and got to know some of our employees and their families. It was fun. We met over at the bowling alley and had a good time. Even though I couldn't bowl, I had as much fun as I could. So yeah, balls were flying, soda was flowing, money was being passed around. It was a great time. Try to make it sound exciting for a government party. It was fun.
And may I add, that was great because I had an opportunity to meet some of these new employees that I wouldn't have known if they'd have come up and bit me prior to that. So yeah, thanks for doing that. So a lot of these individuals I'd met for the first time. So
Yeah, and thanks for going around and being introduced. And
yeah.
It was well done, Ty. Thank you.
So our next, I just have some personnel updates real quick. Teresa Shope is here. This is a requirement when somebody accomplishes something that they come in and
Get recognized.
yep. But anyway, her role has changed significant this last year as we lost our public works director with our building official, and we've reorganized, and she's come a long ways. I meet with them at the beginning of each year and kind of do a goal setting session, and our new pay scale that we adopted before allows us to kind of build a path for each employee individually. And I just want to compliment Teresa, and one of her goals was to become certified in economic development. So I'll let her talk about what that took, but I support professional development, as much as I can. And I just think that that's a great statement for someone in planning and zoning to want to become familiar with economic development, because those two are sometimes competing interests. They're sometimes in conflict with one another. When on economic development, you're just like, yes, let's please more, let's just accommodate. And not that everything always goes that well, but that perspective, I think, is just gonna help her become a lot more aware on a planning staff level, and her to express that interest and then spend the time to get certified is pretty impressive to me. And I just want to publicly thank her for all of her efforts. She's a very engaged employee, constantly trying to help us improve. And she also this year has helped us do the online processes, so that civic review is something that she's handled by herself in terms of getting all of our forms and everything online, working with the contractor back and forth on that permitting process. So it's pretty significant effort. And then most recently has become our GIS administrator for the city, so that she can get our guys' accounts set up to manage whatever level of access they need, so that it works seamless. And whatever that gizmo is that we bought with the stick, you probably know, where you go out and do our own shooting in stuff, we'll be able to update our own perfect maps as we go. And she's facilitating that discussion with Jones and Associates. So just, just a killer year. Kudos to you. And then if you wouldn't mind answering any questions from the council, or at least letting them know what you had to do to get this certification.
Well, thank you very much.
It's not even turning red or anything yet. I'm trying my best to embarrass you.
I know, that's for sure. So as we started transitioning to different roles, et cetera, a lot of times we have developers and or investors that come in through the city, and Ty and I have been involved with those conversations. And of course, I was coming through with our planning portion, and Ty was on the economic development, and he'll be honest and tell you that we butted heads quite a bit on some of the projects, because I would say no and he'd say why not. And so anyway, I felt like it was very important for me to learn more about economic development, because that's something that, is a big part of investors and having that first initial contact. So this is continuing education class through the University of Utah Valley University. And so they have a satellite office in Layton. So I didn't have to go all the way to Orem, but clear to Layton. And it was a basic economic development course. There was about 10 of us, and just talked about different aspects of economic development. We talked about grants and loans and things that you can do that way. How do you decide if a investor is going to be beneficial to the city, and how smaller ones can be better, or how to work an investment that comes in with the resources you already have in the city that could complement each other. So it's a really good informative classes. So that's what I took on there. So one of the things that I really enjoy about Morgan City and Ty is Ty encourages for the employees to have continuing education and to benefit themselves as well as the city. For example, he'd encouraged that we become that I become a member of the American Planning Association. We did that this year, which is fantastic because we get a lot more, interactive networking with other planners and additional training and et cetera. So, that was another thing that we did this year. The GIS was a great thing to start. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be good. We kind of had a disconnect there. So we're trying to connect more of the dots where, our public works director we had before connected a lot of dots. And so we're now, we've got fantastic employees. They all are very good in their specialty. And so, Ty is, we're working more to have a better connection. And so I'm trying to help facilitate that and have more seamless process, since most developers feel like cities never like them. So we're hoping to change that. Did anybody have any questions? I don't answer questions. I'm just kidding.
So Teresa, that's college credit that you receive for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, something that could be transferred, I'm sure, to other universities if you need it. Do you have your eyes set on something else? Anything else?
Not as of yet. One of the things we have discussed is in the planning portion, to become a planner is actually a 4-year degree.
Okay.
And I have chosen not to pursue that as I'm getting older in age and I probably graduate the time when I'm ready to retire. So I don't know about that.
Well, congratulations on the accomplishment.
Yeah.
Well done.
Congratulations. That's
Weren't
it.
weren't the classes all on Fridays?
Yeah, they were on Fridays. So
So that's another, commitment, I think.
Yeah.
Just
So we only worked out for half a day on Fridays, but it was a trek to Lehigh and back on Fridays.
And I appreciate the comment you made about Ty being one that not pushes, but really encourages the new employees to further your education and your understanding of what you're doing. So that's great.
And
Ty,
it was,
so-
when I had first approached him in our little interview that we do, we set goals. I happened to mention, it goes, oh, I have a perfect thing for you. So he had already, actually he had gone to this class previously. So it's a good class.
yeah, it's one that I previously did, but she was my favorite employee to argue with.
Yes, he does. We argue back and forth and then he'll call me back and say, and this isn't personal and it's just good for us to do this.
Yeah.
We do. Just all
Appreciate
good.
you. Thank you.
That's a great accomplishment.
Hey, thank you.
As if you have a lot of spare time. So that's really dedicated.
Speaking of employees, so Isaiah Jackson's he's our newest employee in the Parks Department. You met him at the bowling alley and he just finished his degree. And so I just wanted to mention that as well. So he has a degree in recreation. I forgot the title. It's like 4 words long, but through Weber State.
4-year degree.
4-year degree, yeah. Bachelor's, and it was, I should have printed it off. I apologize, but that's also something that, I appreciate. We have a lot of really specialized and well-trained employees, but we don't have a lot of formal degrees in the city. And so, and both of those result in a raise in our pay scale. So Teresa and Isaiah, so he just barely started and got his first raise for finishing a degree. So it's good. And then another personnel, Keaton Stewart has decided to resign. So he's given his notice and he was in the water department. Just a great kid, local employee, or local but has decided to find a different career path. So it's one of those things that you try it and you go as far as you can, and if it's not your whole life's work, then I respect his decision to try and find something more in line. And he also has a degree, so he has a lot of potential in some other areas. But so we're gonna not refill or backfill his position. We're gonna get through the winter and just have the 2 employees in the water department. We made it through that summer with all the leaks and everything else, and kind of feel like we can hold the line until spring and then reevaluate to see if we try and get another water operator trained. And so just to let you know where we're at with that. Then outside of personnel, we have just a couple things. The Mayor Gale and I, as a transition in December and finished in January, went and met each in the public works departments individually and gave them a little tour. He got to see the sewer plant, and not much to see in parks under the snow right now, facilities wise, but met with each one of the departments, and they're all pretty excited to see his interest in what it is that we do, and know that we have his support. So I think we're off to a really, really good start operationally. So thank you, Mayor, for the.
I have a comment on that. Every department was amazing to me. What I like about it is if there's a problem, they share to solve the problem, rather than have a guy that's just leaning on a shovel observing, because we have too many in the department heads, or I shouldn't say too many, but a bigger staff. But everybody is amazing to me. I just was very impressed with them. Also, the office has been very patient with me, and I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned to them many times, I'm certainly not a politician, and they've been very good to me to help me. They told me that no matter how bad I flub up, it'll still be all right in conducting this meeting the first few times. So thank you. I appreciate the atmosphere of this city and the people that work here.
Steve, I just add to that, those are cultures that have been brought about in part by Ty's work, recognizing what Ty has brought in the last few years.
Yeah, I've had many hours with Ty, and I'm very impressed. He's done a great job, and is doing a great job. I shouldn't say he's done a great job. The future's bright, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you. Thank you. At least you haven't pronounced me as a deceased person yet. Sorry. Then just my last item, I'm about to sign a grant award. So I've been working with Rachel Turk over at the Historic Society with the county, and she's helped us get a grant to restore the train depot building. And so that came through. We got a $72,018 grant. So we, I like that. We put out, apply, see what happens. And we got the grant for the basement and the one for the train depot, both in the same budget year. So we're going to pursue it. We'll probably have some more budget amendments, just so you know, but the grant money has to be spent by June. And so we have a Gantt chart that has to be consolidated, for that project to go through, because it has to have some historic architecture as part of that construction project. That'll make it ADA compliant, bring it up to code so that it can be used. And so we're pretty excited about that, and really just appreciate her, working with these county departments to, better the city. And On a side note, the Chamber of Commerce is right now going through a process where they're planning on transitioning to a chamber bureau, which means there'd also be a visitors bureau. And they're working with the county on some grant dollars to maybe hire a staff. Right now, they don't have any staff of their own. And so that's kind of what we're planning. We don't have any formal agreements, but to have hopefully an agreement with them to house over there at the train depot, make it a visitors bureau experience, and maybe have some content there that kind of gives our town history and celebrates it and turns it into a little bit of a little tourist thing. The other thing she's working on is a historic designation for our historic district. So I don't know if you remember, we did the reconnaissance level survey where they went and looked at homes and businesses and all of that. And so we're just in the next process of having that, designated in the next, I think our meeting's next week. We have an online one with the state historic board. So I think that's all updates I have so far. I mean, that's all I have, sorry.
Speaking of the train depot, maybe it's perhaps because I live over in that neck of the town. I know when we took a look at first thought about having that caboose moved over there. I don't know if probably I can save myself. I don't know how excited I was about it, but it's turned out to be, I think, pretty successful. I see a lot of people stop there and pictures and go through that old caboose. So I think that's kind of a success story. So just thought I'd mention that, but yeah, I think it turned out all right.
And that depot, our goal on the rest of Commercial Street is to have all the buildings occupied. So we might as well try and occupy our own building that we own, right? We don't want to be the only vacant building on the street.
That'd be a milestone. It's been 25 years since that's been used.
You mentioned that you have to have this money spent by June. Is this a fast construction or a fast remodel that has to take place? That'll be interesting with all the supply and demands that are going on.
Yeah. So we're working through that right now. If there's opportunity to ask for extension or whatnot, or if we just have to have it obligated, but we're going to press forward and put that in the bid. Just the deadlines have to be kind of built in, right, to the construction. So, and or it's an existing building and most of it's ADA type stuff. The furnishings and the inside doesn't have to be all. That's not necessarily even part of the grant, but we'll see what we get as far as bids. So right now we're just accepting the grant. We'll put it out to bid. If we don't get it spent or we can't, then we just turn the grant money back. So.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Any more comments? This one. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find out. On the closed session, I believe you helped me there. Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
I will make a motion that we goes into a closed session for the discussion of the character, professional competence, physical or mental health of an individual.
That one's a. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa. Any opposed?